You only come here on weekends? So, when the place is empty, you should be making better use of the land. Madison, my eldest sister, said it casually as she gently swirled the mimosa glass in her hand, the pale orange liquid catching the morning sunlight. Beside her, my second sister, Brianna, and my third sister, Haley, flicked their fingers across their smartphone screens, letting out crude snickering laughter at something I couldn't see. I doubted my own ears at first. For a long moment, I simply stood there near my car, the engine still ticking as it cooled, and I could not believe that the scene unfolding before me was real. This was Pacific Palisades, California. It was about a precious vacation home of mine, a structure I had designed down to the last beam and window frame, built on a hill overlooking the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean. My personal sanctuary, obtained only after years of building my career as a senior architect at one of the most demanding firms in Los Angeles and enduring blood-soaked levels of effort that had left me with gray hairs before I turned 35. On weekdays, I survived minute-by-minute schedules amid the chaos of Los Angeles, juggling client demands, contractor disasters, and municipal permit nightmares. And only on weekends did I come here to soothe my mind, listening to the quiet sound of the waves in a house I had designed myself to be a fortress of peace. That was my one and only luxury, and the very thing that sustained my life through the worst of times. But now, what filled my field of vision was not serenity. It was invasion. From the private driveway to the front yard, rows of luxury SUVs and sports cars were lined up in an orderly, yet disturbingly dense formation. I counted slowly, my jaw tightening with each number. A rough count alone showed at least 30 vehicles. Some were gleaming black Range Rovers, others were low-slung Porsches, and a few were glittering white Teslas that looked as though they had just rolled off the showroom floor. Worse still, at the entrance stood a garish, neon-colored sign I had never seen before. It was printed on cheap corrugated plastic in screaming pink and electric green. The Palisades Azure Mall exclusive temporary parking, $50 per day. When I looked closer, the sign had even been thoughtfully supplemented with notes such as reservation required and no cash. App payment only. There was even a QR code printed in the corner, presumably for quick access to whatever digital scheme they had cooked up. I felt my fingertips tremble with intense anger, a heat rising from my chest into my throat. What awaited me after finishing work late on Friday night, after pulling an all-nighter to review blueprints, after driving out early Saturday morning while the city was still asleep, just to enjoy a peaceful weekend, was an unauthorized private parking lot being operated by my own sisters. I took a long, slow breath, forcing myself to remain calm, and then I muttered under my breath, "Explain this to me, please. What exactly is going on here?" I got out of the car and walked toward an outdoor folding table set up near the front door. The table was one of those cheap plastic ones you buy at a big box store, covered with a wrinkled white cloth that had coffee stains on one corner. There, Madison and the others were seated as if they were enjoying a vacation, with the latest tablet devices placed casually in front of them and a small portable card reader connected to one of their phones. Madison slid her designer sunglasses down her nose and looked up at me with an expression of mild annoyance, as if I were the one interrupting her day. "Oh, Natalie, didn't you say you weren't coming this weekend?" Her voice was light, almost cheerful, completely unaware of the storm she had unleashed. I ignored her fake pleasantry and stepped closer, my shadow falling across the table. "Answer the question. Did you seriously think it was okay to let strangers park on my property without my permission?" My voice was low but sharp, each word cut like glass. At that point, Brianna, who had been silently fiddling with her phone, opened her mouth with visible annoyance. She rolled her eyes dramatically and waved one hand in the air as if shooing away a fly. "Hey, don't get so mad, okay? Did you see the Azure Mall right there? It's always completely full on weekends, and cars looking for parking are left wandering around with nowhere to go. We're just helping people who are in trouble. You could call it a social contribution." She smiled at her own cleverness, and Haley snorted a laugh beside her. "Social contribution?" I repeated the words as if they were poison on my tongue. By using my private property without permission and charging $50 per car? Yes, because this land is way too big anyway. Haley then joined in, her voice dripping with casual entitlement. She set her phone down on the table and gestured broadly at the yard. You know it's a waste for you to use this place all by yourself. I mean, look at this lawn. It's huge. When was the last time you even had a party here? This business has been booming for the past month. The wealthy people who come to the mall think $50 is pocket change. Some of them even tip. Thanks to that, we haven't had to worry about our living expenses this month. She crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, clearly proud of herself. Their words made me feel dizzy, as if the ground were shifting beneath my feet. A month? I whispered the word, and then louder, a month? In other words, they had taken advantage of the several weeks when I was buried in work and unable to come to the house, and they had been repeating this criminal act the entire time. My mind raced backward through the past 4 weekends, each one I had spent in my downtown Los Angeles apartment, too exhausted to make the drive, believing my home was safe and waiting for me. All the while, it had been turned into a commercial parking lot. I pointed a trembling finger at the sign near the entrance. Make every single car leave immediately and take down that disgusting sign. This is trespassing and an unauthorized business. From this very moment on, do not let a single person step onto my property. I will not say this twice. When I said this coldly, Madison set her glass down on the table with a deliberate clink and slowly stood up. She was taller than me, and she used that height to try to intimidate me, squaring her shoulders and lifting her chin. Honestly, Natalie, you're so stingy. What's wrong with your family making a little money? You earn more than enough as it is. You know your sisters are struggling, yet you keep this huge vacation home all to yourself. You should have a bit more of a sharing spirit. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stack of cash, fanning it like a poker hand. Oh, right. I can give you about 10% of today's profits as a management fee if you want. Consider it a finder's fee. She actually smiled as she said it, as if she were doing me a favor. At those words, I felt something inside me snap. It was not a loud break but a quiet, decisive fracture, like a bone finally giving way under too much pressure. Because we are family. Hiding behind that excuse, they had taken advantage of my goodwill over and over again throughout my entire life. They had borrowed money they never repaid, crashed at my apartments without contributing to rent, and used my name to get reservations at restaurants they could never afford. But this time was different. This went far beyond simple selfishness and crossed into clear betrayal and outright crime. I see. So, that's your answer. I took my smartphone out of my bag, my movements slow and deliberate. Natalie, what are you planning to do? Madison asked, her face clouded with suspicion for the first time. The confidence in her voice wavered just slightly. I looked straight into their eyes and spoke carefully, one word at a time, so there would be no misunderstanding. I'm just doing what's necessary to protect my rights. Without hesitation, I dialed 3 numbers. As I lifted the phone to my ear, Madison slammed her hand down on the table, making the glasses jump and rattle. Her face turned pale beneath her tan. Hey Natalie, you're not actually planning to call the police, are you? Don't be ridiculous. This is just a small misunderstanding within the family. Put the phone down. We can talk about this. But I held the phone tighter and met her gaze without flinching. A misunderstanding? Fine. Depending on how you answer my questions, I might reconsider. I lowered the phone just slightly, my thumb hovering over the call button. First, how did you get into the house? I was supposed to be the only one with access to the keys. I was thinking of the electronic lock on the front door, which required a 6-digit code that I had never shared with anyone, and the physical spare key I had hidden as a backup inside a fake rock near the garden shed. I had never given the passcode to anyone, not even during emergencies. Then Brianna, her eyes darting around nervously, muttered a reluctant confession. She looked down at her hands, then at Madison, then back at me. It was 6 months ago at that funeral. Grandma passed away, and we all gathered at the family home, remember? Your bag was sitting in the living room while you were in the kitchen crying with Mom, so we just borrowed it for a moment and had a spare key made at a nearby hardware shop. It only took like 15 minutes. We put the key right back. We didn't think you would ever notice. That was the day I lost my beloved grandmother, the only person in my family who had ever truly understood me. I had been consumed by deep grief, walking through that funeral as if in a fog, barely able to see through my tears. During that sacred time of mourning, when I trusted my family without even a hint of doubt, they had gone through my bag, rummaged past my personal belongings, stolen my key, and made copies of it. The sheer despicableness of the act made me feel nauseous. My stomach churned, and I had to take a breath to keep from gagging. Mom said it, too, that you might need help in an emergency, so we thought it would be good to have it just in case something happened. Haley added, as if trying to justify herself, her voice high and quick. But isn't it a waste to just keep it without ever using it? About 6 months ago, when the three of us came shopping at the Azure Mall, the parking lot had a 3-hour wait. It was absolute chaos. People were honking and yelling. That's when Madison came up with a truly brilliant idea. She pointed at Madison with both hands, as if presenting a magician. Madison spoke with her chin lifted slightly, a hint of pride showing as if she were revealing a masterstroke of genius. That's right. The mall parking charges $20 per hour after the first 2 hours for each car. Do the math. That adds up fast. But your vacation home's yard is only a 5-minute walk from the mall. If we stand here with a sign, people are more than happy to pay. We started with just a few cars at first, maybe 5 or 6 on a good day, but word spread too quickly on social media. Someone posted about it on a local Facebook group, and then it just exploded. And now we're even using a dedicated reservation app that a friend of a friend helped us set up. We recovered the cost of making that ugly sign in just 3 days. She actually looked proud of this accomplishment. The more I listened to them, the more I shuddered at the sheer level of planning involved and their complete lack of respect for me as a person, as a sister, as the owner of this property. They saw this place, which I had built with my own blood, sweat, and devotion through years of sleepless nights and impossible deadlines, as nothing more than a free business space, a parking lot with a view. The lawn, which I had carefully nurtured, had been trampled by heavy tires. Deep ruts were carved into the grass. Oil stains marred the beautiful stone pavement near the driveway. They could never imagine how many meetings I had held with professional landscapers, how many invoices I had paid, just to preserve the scenery of this garden. That's enough. This is pointless. Suppressing the tremor in my voice, I raised the phone back to my ear and spoke to the operator on the other end. This is an emergency. Multiple individuals are trespassing on my property and conducting unauthorized commercial activity. Yes, I am the owner. The trespassers are my relatives, but I have given no permission whatsoever and I am demanding their immediate removal. Yes, more than 30 vehicles are illegally parked on the premises. Hey, stop it. Madison tried to grab my arm, her nails digging into my sleeve, but I sharply shook her off and stepped backward. Don't touch me. Have you ever once thought about what it means to me to protect this house? Do you have any idea how I worked 60 hours a week, sometimes 70, caught between my screaming bosses and impossible clients, and how much responsibility I carried to obtain this place? I designed every corner of this house while crying at my desk. You trampled all of that for your own spending money, for your brunches and your handbags and your nail appointments. This isn't just about money. This is a violation of my dignity and my safety. For a brief moment, my sisters seemed intimidated by the cold, unyielding expression they had never seen on my face before. I saw something flicker in their eyes, maybe the first glimmer of understanding that this time was different. But Madison quickly raised her voice again, now shrill and hysterical. Dignity? You're so uptight, Natalie. You have plenty of money, so why can't you just let this slide? Is it really such a grave sin for us to use unused land to earn a little extra income? Do you have any idea what Mom and Dad will say if you call the police? They will never forgive you for this. What Mom and Dad think has nothing to do with me right now. I will protect my property in accordance with the law. That's all. And now, show me that tablet. All records of illegally obtained profits will be submitted as evidence. Don't be ridiculous. Brianna hid the tablet behind her back, clutching it to her chest like a shield. "This is the result of our hard work. If you want it back, then sue us." "Yes, that's exactly what I intend to do." At that moment, the sound of sirens could be heard in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder. Carried by the sea breeze, the sound grew steadily louder, as if pushing my resolve forward. One patrol car, then another, turned into my private driveway, their tires crunching on the gravel. Red and blue lights cast an eerie, pulsing glow over the ugly pink sign my sisters had set up, making the neon colors look almost grotesque. The two police officers who stepped out of the cars were both in their 40s, wearing aviator sunglasses and stern expressions. They looked back and forth between the long line of vehicles, my sisters standing there in shock with their mouths hanging open, and me standing firm with my phone still in my hand, trying to grasp the situation. "Are you the one who made the call?" one of the officers asked me, resting his hand on his belt. I took a deep breath, regained my composure, and answered clearly, "Yes, my name is Natalie Chin, and I am the sole owner of this property as documented on this deed." I pulled the folded document from my bag and held it up. "The three women here entered without my permission and are operating an illegal parking business on my land. Please remove them immediately and take the appropriate legal action." The officer nodded slowly and looked at my sisters. "Could you explain exactly what is going on here?" Just as I was about to speak, Madison cut in and shouted, "Officer, please calm down. This is just a family squabble. I'm the homeowner's sister, and we were only preparing for a small party. A surprise party, actually. My sister tends to exaggerate and panic over nothing. I mean, we're family. There's no way this could be trespassing, right?" She laughed, a hollow, nervous sound. Madison tried to talk her way out using one of the charming lies she had relied on countless times throughout her life. She knew very well that police officers are often reluctant to intervene in family disputes. Brianna and Haley hurriedly chimed in as well. "That's right. Our sister said she was coming this weekend, so we just invited a bunch of friends as a surprise. All these cars belong to our friends. That sign? It's just a joke, a decoration. We didn't take a single dollar from anyone. I swear on Grandma's grave." I cut through their performance with a cold stare. "May I have a moment, officer?" I had already anticipated exactly what they would say. When I pulled a thick folder out of my bag, my sisters' faces visibly stiffened. Inside that folder were not only copies of the property deed and my identification, but also detailed records covering the past month, printed on crisp white paper. First, ownership of this house belongs to me 100%. They do not reside here, they have never lived here, and they have no right to enter without my explicit permission. And this is the evidence of what they are calling a joke. On my smartphone, I showed screenshots of the reservation website they had been using for advertising, complete with customer reviews, and a payment portal. Also showed the video I had taken just minutes earlier of the entrance sign clearly stating $50 per day. Then I pointed toward the table where they had been sitting moments earlier. On that table, officer, there is a card reader for payments and a tablet that appears to be managing their sales. I have not touched either one. They are systematically and unlawfully using my private property for commercial purposes in a residential zone. In a community like Pacific Palisades, you are well aware how serious an offense unlicensed commercial activity and unauthorized use of private land can be. The neighbors have already complained about the noise, I added, gesturing toward a curtain twitching in the house across the street. One of the officers walked over to the table and picked up the tablet. Madison screamed, "Don't touch that." But he ignored her completely and checked the screen, scrolling through what appeared to be a dashboard of daily earnings. He raised his eyebrows and exchanged a glance with his partner. "Madison, did you really think I wouldn't notice?" At my words, Madison gasped. "What? What are you talking about?" 6 months ago, on the day of Grandma's funeral, when you secretly took my key and then put it back. I'm extremely meticulous about my belongings. I noticed the fine metal shavings clinging to the key when I used it the next day. I knew someone had made a copy. Brianna and Haley exchanged glances and began to tremble visibly, their faces turning gray. But I didn't say anything at the time. I decided to wait and see how you were going to use that key. I wanted to know the extent of your betrayal. And about a month ago, I deliberately wrote in the family group chat, didn't I, that a major project had come in, that I probably wouldn't be able to come to the house for a month, and that the security system would be temporarily shut down for maintenance. I was baiting you. So, are you saying that was a trap? Madison screamed, her voice cracking. Yes, you acted exactly as I expected. For the past month, I've been remotely checking all the footage from the hidden cameras I installed in the garden after I discovered the key was copied. I saw everything. When you ordered the sign, when you started collecting parking fees, all of it is saved right here on this smartphone and in the cloud. I held up the screen of my smartphone. On it were clear date-stamped videos lined up in neat rows, showing my sisters cheerfully taking cash from customers, directing traffic, and prompting them to pay through an app. I could see the color drain from their faces all at once, a bloodless horror spreading across their features. The confidence of believing our sister will forgive us in the end finally collapsed like a house of cards. Officers, this was intentional. They built this business systematically, fully convinced that I would never come here because they believed I was too weak to confront them. Everything is documented. Where they placed the sign, how they attracted customers through social media ads, and the complete record up until my arrival today. This is not a momentary trespass, but a continuous profit-driven criminal act carried out over an entire month. One of the officers looked visibly surprised and fixed his gaze sharply on my sisters again. He pulled out a small notebook and began writing. I see. So, this was premeditated. Are you still going to insist this was just a family party? Madison's face turned ashen, a terrible mix of anger, humiliation, and fear flooding her eyes. Natalie, please stop this. What do you think you're doing showing all this to the police? Are you really saying you're okay with your sisters going to jail? She was crying now, tears cutting tracks through her makeup. I glanced at her briefly, then spoke calmly to the officers. This involves trespassing, theft of a key, organized unauthorized commercial activity, and potentially fraud if they misrepresented themselves as authorized agents of the property. As the owner, I am formally pressing charges against them. I will make no compromises. The moment those words left my mouth, the air at the scene froze solid. Wait, Natalie. You're serious? Madison began to cry and scream, her composure completely gone. It's just a parking lot. No one got hurt, and we didn't destroy the house. Why would someone with money like you turn your poor sisters over to the police instead of helping them? You're a devil. A cold-hearted monster. No one got hurt? Don't make me laugh. I stepped forward and confronted her, our faces inches apart. What if a fire had broken out because of these illegally parked cars blocking the driveway? What if a mall customer had tripped and fallen on my property, broken their hip, and sued me? I would have been fully responsible. My career, this house, everything I have built could have been lost because of your shallow little business. You turned my life into a gambling chip. Don't sully that with words like family. After reviewing the evidence I presented and hearing my sister's near-confessional protest, the officers seemed to conclude that this was no longer a simple civil matter. The taller one unclipped a pair of handcuffs from his belt. We understand the situation. On suspicion of organized trespassing, unauthorized commercial activity, and theft, you will all be required to come with us to the station. The moment the officer pulled the handcuffs open with a metallic click, Brianna and Haley collapsed onto the ground and began to cry in heaving sobs, their legs buckling beneath them. Madison started thrashing around wildly as if she had lost her mind, screaming obscenities. Let go of me. Don't touch me. Natalie, cancel this right now. I'm telling Dad about this. I'll ruin your life. Neighbors who heard the commotion came outside to see what was happening, standing on their porches in bathrobes and slippers. In the once quiet seaside residential area, my sister's filthy screams and the crackle of police radio transmissions echoed loudly across the lawns. I simply stared coldly at the three of them as they were handcuffed and shoved into the back seats of the patrol cars. Miss Natalie, we'll need a detailed statement from you later at the station. We will also be confiscating the tablet and the sign as evidence from the scene. I nodded deeply and watched the patrol cars drive away. After they left, all that remained in the now silent private driveway were 33 parked cars and a trampled, ruined lawn. But my battle was only just beginning. I contacted the towing company I had arranged in advance. Yes, the police investigation at the scene is finished. There are 33 illegally parked vehicles. Please tow every single one of them. The tow trucks arrived within 20 minutes. There were a few confrontations with returning customers who found their cars being lifted onto flatbeds, but I wordlessly shoved copies of the legal notice regarding trespassing that I had prepared beforehand into their hands and rejected every complaint with a flat, unwavering no. Then my smartphone began to vibrate violently, shaking across the table. The name displayed on the screen was Mom. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and pressed the call button. Natalie, what on earth are you thinking? My mother's shrill voice pierced my eardrums through the phone. I just got a call from Madison. She said she's at the police station in handcuffs. Is it true that you turned your own sisters over to the police? This has to be a joke, right? Tell me it's a lie. Unfortunately, it's all true, Mom. They trespassed on my vacation home without my permission and ran an illegal parking business for an entire month. So I reported it in accordance with the law. Illegal parking business? They were struggling and needed a little help to get by. As a successful sister like you, couldn't you have just been a bit more generous and watched over them? How can you treat your own family like criminals? Don't you have a heart? My mother's words were exactly what I had expected. It was the same logic she had always used, constantly indulging my sisters and pushing the responsibility of cleaning up after them onto me, the successful daughter. Mom, listen carefully. Do you know how they got into the house? I asked calmly, but with a voice as sharp as a blade. They stole my key from my bag on the day of Grandma's funeral and made copies of it. While I was grieving the loss of Grandma, they were already planning how to plunder my home. And you still think I should be generous? I could tell that my mother was momentarily left speechless on the other end of the line. But then my father, who must have been listening nearby, snatched the phone and unleashed an even harsher shout. Natalie, it's just a key for God's sake, and your vacation house is always empty anyway. What's wrong with making good use of it? Your arrogant attitude is what's tearing this family apart. Go to the police right now and withdraw the complaint. If you don't, we're cutting ties with you. The moment I heard those words from my father, I felt the final line inside me collapse with an audible crash. You just said you'd cut ties with me as family, didn't you, Dad? I said quietly, but with unwavering resolve. Fine. Today, I called the police to stop my sister's crimes, but at the same time, I made the decision to sever myself from your disease of dependency. From now on, there is no place for you in my life. What are you saying? Natalie, are you serious? I am serious, and let me make this clear as well. I will be replacing all the locks on the house and installing the latest security system with biometric access and 24-hour monitoring. From now on, if anyone steps onto my property without permission, even one of you, I will immediately report it as trespassing and take legal action. I ended the call before my father could shout anything back. Then I immediately blocked both of their numbers. At the edge of my vision, I saw the last tow truck pulling out of my driveway, its yellow lights flashing. Even though I had lost my family, my heart felt strangely light and clear, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had protected my home, and I had protected my dignity, my life itself. The next morning, while drinking my coffee on the back porch overlooking the ocean, I waited for a call from my legal counsel, Ethan, whom I had contacted the night before. At exactly 8 a.m., my smartphone rang. Good morning, Natalie. This is Ethan. His voice was calm and businesslike, as always. That steady tone pulled me back from the storm of emotions of the previous night into cold, clear reality. Ethan, what's the situation? Your sisters are currently being held in custody. Overnight, the video evidence you submitted, the number of vehicles that were towed, and the data from the confiscated tablet were reviewed. Trespassing and theft, along with violations of state law due to unauthorized commercial activity. All of this is more than sufficient to be formally pursued as a criminal case. Are they saying anything? Madison is making the most noise. At first, she insisted it was just family fun, but when the video evidence was presented, she started lashing out, accusing you of using dirty, sting-like tactics. The police couldn't care less about what she said. Brianna and Haley were just crying nonstop and asking for their mother. And one more thing. Your parents have been sitting in the station lobby since last night. They're demanding to be put through to you and are causing trouble for the staff. Just after I hung up with Ethan, my phone rang again. An unknown number. It was probably my mother borrowing someone else's phone. I answered once and only once to bring this to an end. Natalie, please. The furious shouting from yesterday was gone, replaced by a damp, trembling voice of pleading. I was wrong. Yesterday I panicked. Please, Natalie. The girls are at their limit. Madison hasn't slept at all and is shaking nonstop, and Haley keeps throwing up from anxiety. At this rate, their minds are going to break. I'll do anything. I'll do exactly what you say. So please get them out of there. Please. I'm begging you on my knees. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably on the other end of the line, her words broken by gasps and sniffles. I had never imagined that my proud mother would ever humble herself this completely before her own daughter. But I knew. These tears were not remorse for the crimes my sisters had committed, but fear of the collapse of the family they had clung to. All right, Mom. I'll give you one chance. But this is not to go back to being the same family as before. This is my final mercy so that I can sever all ties completely. I contacted Ethan and presented a single condition. An hour later, I went to the police station with my lawyer. There, my parents were waiting, looking as though they had aged 10 years overnight, with dark circles under their eyes and disheveled clothes. Along with my sisters, who had just had their handcuffs removed and stared ahead with hollow, soulless expressions, as if they had seen something terrible. Without meeting their eyes, I placed several documents prepared by Ethan on the table. There is only one condition. Sign these papers. The documents listed several clauses with full legal force. They would be permanently prohibited from entering any property I owned. They would be forbidden from contacting me by any means whatsoever, including phone, text, email, or through third parties. If they violated any of these terms, the current charges would be reinstated immediately, and they would consent to immediate criminal prosecution with no further warnings. They would also agree to pay full compensation for the damages, including lawn restoration costs, towing fees, legal expenses, and an additional penalty for emotional distress. If I sign this, you'll really forgive us, right? Madison looked up at me while gripping the pen with trembling fingers. The arrogant gleam that once filled her eyes was gone, replaced by nothing but bottomless fear and exhaustion. One night in detention must have been a hellish experience for people as sheltered and entitled as they were. I'm not forgiving you. I'm agreeing to have nothing to do with you. I will erase your existence from my life. If you accept that, I'll let you walk out of here today. The sisters didn't even have the composure to look at each other. They signed the documents as if possessed, their signatures shaky and barely legible. My parents watched in silence, their faces masks of grief and resentment. They too seemed to realize that they had lost forever their golden goose and their reliable daughter, the one who always paid for everything and fixed every problem. After the documents were accepted by the prosecutor and the charges were formally withdrawn, my sisters were released later that same day. However, what they were left with was not freedom. In the police database, arrest records for trespassing and theft were firmly etched next to their names. And those records would cling to them like dark shadows every time they tried to find new work or build any form of social credibility in the future. They would come to understand again and again throughout their lives just how heavy a shackle their shallow actions had become. As we left the police station, Madison turned back to look at me just once. She seemed about to say something, her lips parting, but my cold, unyielding gaze pinned her in place. She flinched as if struck, and then she hurriedly climbed into my parents' car as if fleeing from a ghost. I watched the car drive away with an expressionless face, feeling nothing but the quiet satisfaction of justice done. Several months passed after that. From my life, The noise called family disappeared completely, replaced by a profound and healing silence. When I arrive at my Pacific Palisades vacation home on weekends, perfect silence greets me. The lawn has been restored, the stone pavement cleaned, and new security cameras watch over every corner of the property. Occasionally, I hear from distant relatives or old family friends about what kind of hell my former family is now enduring. It is far more miserable than I ever imagined possible. First and foremost, what awaited my three sisters was the inescapable chain known as an arrest record. I hear that they now drift from one low-wage hourly job to another, the very kind of work they once looked down on with such contempt, all the while living in constant fear of the shadow cast by their criminal history. Background checks reveal everything. Employers see the trespassing and theft charges, and they pass over their applications without a second glance. All of their brand-name bags and jewelry have been sold off piece by piece to pay bills, and now they huddle together in a cramped, two-bedroom room at my parents' house, spending their days hurling blame and insults at one another over who started the whole idea. And my parents, who had continued to indulge them for decades, are now paying the price as well. On top of that, the compensation I demanded was by no means a small amount. In an attempt to lessen their daughter's criminal records, even slightly, my parents reportedly drained their retirement savings and took out a second mortgage to cover the payments. No matter how financially destitute or mentally cornered they may be now, not a single ripple stirs in my heart. Because this is the path they chose of their own free will, every step of the way. I take deep and abiding pride in the decision I made. I cut away relationships that were poisoning me drop by drop, and I protected my assets, my dignity, and my future. For the first time in my life, the silence of my home is truly mine.